Hello everybody, Steve Griffiths here, developer of the MTPredictor software program. In today's MTPredictor video, I'd like to look at how markets can be frustrating sometimes. And this is a thing to remember when you're trading, is that markets don't have perfect patterns all the time. But before we start, I need to remind you that all examples in these videos should be considered as hypothetical. No trades are actually taken, they're just shown for illustration and training purposes only. Remind you all there's a risk of loss in trading and investing. I'll put this another way. All professional traders know, understand, but more importantly accept that losses can and will and do unfold. Fact of trading, there'll always be losing trades no matter what approach you do. So I want to have a look at the USE minis yesterday, which was Tuesday the 5th of March as an example of this. And you can see here we have a 3-minute chart of the ES on a day session only chart, and you can see basically the market moved sideways in a very choppy, narrow range day. The moves were quite small, and you can see if you were just purely and simply using our MTP trend and taking these setups just blind with no idea of where the market was going, you would have had quite a hard day. I mean, that one was almost stopped out, didn't quite, and then this one here. This was a VS setup, and of course you wouldn't have really been taking that because it wasn't failing around an important psychological high or low, but you know that could have been a losing trade, and that one, which looked like the best trade of the day, was actually against our MTP trend. Now remember, what I teach is that we don't use MTPredictor as a 100% mechanical trading system because markets go in cycles, and this was a perfect example of this yesterday. So could there have been any hints that yesterday was going to be basically a choppy, narrow, sideways, horrible day like this? Well, yes, there was, because if I scroll out, if you look at the previous day, nice how the previous day we actually had the high of the day at our 15-minute DP, and it went down very nicely to our 15-minute DP support, and we looked at this in yesterday's training webinar for MTPredictor customers, including that lovely DP buy at the low. But the point I want to make today is, can you see how that was a big day? In other words, you had a big move. The market made quite a big move there, and what happens very often is after the market has made a big move, the following day is very often a consolidation day. In other words, a very choppy, narrow range day where basically the market just decides which way it's going. So if I scroll out a bit, you can see that's really obvious that this was the range yesterday, and in fact if I can put a high tag up there. Oops, didn't quite work. But anyway, you see what I'm trying to do is that there was the high, there was the low, a big wide range day the day before, and then yesterday was basically a choppy, narrow range sideways day. So you should have been anticipating that yesterday would have been a horrible day because it followed on for a big wide range day. So we use the same approach as anything else, and when days like this, our DPs tend to work quite nicely, because you can see here if I place our DPs off the extremes, you can see the market was just basically bouncing between these. Went up the high there, DP off that level, caught the low. You know, it's just basically bouncing off DPs. But more importantly, it was just going beyond levels before reversing and snapping back. So a very hard day to trade. If you'd be looking at the NQ, and we use exactly the same approach as we normally do, where we look to go to the higher time frame chart. Even though these were nice trade setups, they were against our MTP trend. So if I go to the higher time frame chart, which is the 15-minute chart, see we came off a lovely support level there. But I want to go back to this pivot high here. Remember, these are on the chart in advance. If I just use our trading mode and jump back a bit, you can see how you could have put this DP on the chart in advance off that high. There it was on the chart in advance. If I turn training mode off, you can see what happened. So on our 15-minute DP or 15-minute chart, the market went up and made a high at our higher time frame 15-minute DP. So if I now go down to the 3-minute chart, can you see how the picture became slightly clearer just towards the end of the day? In other words, this is where the market came up into our higher time frame resistance area. It then made a DP sell. Our MTP trend was red, so in other words, it was making a reversal at higher time frame resistance. So here the picture started to become a bit clearer. So if you'd wanted to take that trade, that was a nice plus 2.7 hour profit. But you see how this would have been slightly clearer picture because it was coming into higher time frame resistance. So this is the reason I'm doing the video today, is because I wanted just to explain that there are days when the market is choppy and horrible. You don't get big moves every day, you don't get big profits every day. That's just not the way the markets unfold. So in real life you will get choppy, horrible days like this, and when they unfold, my advice is just to be careful. Don't look to take all the trades all the time. Just wait until the picture becomes clearer and you get a good idealized setup. Can we anticipate sideways days like this? Well, you can never know for sure, but after you've had a wide range big move day like this, very often the next day then consolidate sideways. Not always, but very often. And as we've seen, there was a nice trade on the NQ later off the very bar of the high of the day, where it came in at our 15-minute resistance. But I'll leave that on the ES and just remind you that there will be days like this that are choppy, sideways and horrible, and that's why we don't look to trade 100% of the time or all the time. We look to try and use our common sense and understand that markets go through cycles, and there'll be periods when basically the markets are random like this, choppy, horrible, sideways, and it's best to try and avoid days when the market is basically not behaving itself and being horrible like this.